Hello, and welcome to the Active Archive with Artwork Archive. While everyone is joining, I'm going to tell you a story about why archiving is such a powerful tool in the present for your career right now. My name is Anamika Hops, and I'm an artist in Portland, Oregon. I'm the product education specialist here at Artwork Archive, and I'm also a portrait painter. This is a painting of my daughter. So, 20 years ago, when I was studying art in college, I got to travel to Mexico and I visited the Museo Casa Azul, or the Frida Kahlo Museum that used to be her house. And I knew about Frida Kahlo's artwork, I liked her style, but at that moment that I got to enter a place that she had not only inhabited, but created many of the most well-known works, I suddenly felt a kinship as if I knew her as a human being. So this experience informed my sense of how the context in which we create our work can allow people to connect more deeply with the art itself. Now, not all of us will have a house preserved and dedicated, but today we're going to show you a system that you can implement today. A bit of housekeeping as we get started here. To access captions, use the Zoom settings in your viewer. And yes, we are recording this, and we'll share that recording with you within a day or two after we conclude today's live presentation. For those of you who are here with us live, there's a chat, and please note that the chat is distinct from the Q&A, and this is why. We have a team here ready to support you and respond to your questions, but your questions will get buried in the chat. So when you put them in the Q&A, we'll be able to pair them with an answer and everyone will be able to follow along. This is so exciting. I encourage you to write your name, where you're from, what kind of art you make. We want to get to know. I see that there are about 650 people here present with us live. And you can always follow up with us here, this team at Artwork Archive, via email, or you can chat us anytime you're on the platform. So here's who's supporting you today. My name is Anamika. I already told you a bit about me. We've got Anna Lyle, who is the head of customer support, and she also gives live presentations to help you learn how to get the most out of Artwork Archive. You'll meet her later on in the presentation. We're also supported by Katie Carey, who designed this gorgeous workbook you'll get in the follow-up lessons, and Lauren Nicole coming to us from Costa Rica, supporting you in the Q&A. We're all working artists, arts advocates, and personally living and experiencing the benefits of this work. Now, by attending today, you are going to learn how to implement a system that will benefit you right away. The reason we decided to call this the Active Archive is to invite a different understanding that archiving isn't simply a record of the past. It's not a museum from an artist who lived a century ago. In fact, an archive, in the way that we will be guiding you, can help inform a decision you make today. Truly, the work you're working on right away. It also sets you up for success in the future in how you'd like your impact to extend and how you'd like to advocate for yourself in your career. Artwork Archive is a cloud-based art inventory and truly art career management platform. We began in 2010 as a response to a real need. So one of our co-founders, John, his mother is a professional oil painter, still actively creating work and winning awards. Her work I am very impressed by. So back in 2010, John's mother had a lot of her records of her artwork and the supporting information stored on a physical hard drive. And unfortunately, that physical hard drive failed and she lost those records. So John looked around for a system that could support her, and nothing appropriate for what we do as artists existed at the time. So That's where Artwork Archive began as one of the first cloud-based art inventory management platforms. And we've grown since then. We've grown in response to the needs of our artists, our art collectors, and our organizations, building and improving it to support what you really do. And now we have users in over 150 different countries around the world. You're in good company, whether you're just starting out or you're very well established. We are built to grow with you. Let's talk about some of the history and context of archives and how powerful they can be. So I'll pause for a moment here and just check in with the team. I'm also seeing many people say hello from the Pacific Northwest, from Minnesota, from Los Angeles, Canada, Toronto, Maryland, Michigan, Texas, Denver. This is awesome. Nice to meet you. Hello. Hello. Great. So, for context, take a moment to consider the system you use right now. And you may say, Anamika, I don't have a system, but I beg to differ. Even if it's piles of work, a bunch of stuff in folders, that is your system. That's how this information currently exists, right? And if I were to ask you, hey, I want to see your artwork, what's the name of that? What's the story? You would go to the places you have that information, even if it lives all in your head. So consider that today you'll be introduced to ways that could support you in the current system you have. And this is where I'm passionate about this. What is possible for you when you have the support of things you may not have even known about before? Yeah. You'll hear me say again and again as well that archiving is not about the past. The paradigm that I'm introducing is about how the work comes to be, the before, documenting the finished work, and then all that happens after. Keep that in mind as you go. So an archive is more than simply the photos of your work and the dimensions, right? It's that full context. It's essentially a metaphor for walking into Frida Kahlo's house and understanding more vividly the context in which she made her work. So here it is. Let's revisit this house. When I walked in, I was able to feel the temperature of the air on my skin. On her desk were materials, inspiration, her actual pigments, a mortar and pestle, right? I could imagine just the way the light comes through the room. You could see how that influence is there. There's a very lush courtyard. There's this, cacophony of sounds from Mexico City beyond the walls of her house in Coyoacan neighborhood. So there's this understanding of the work. And with this example of Frida Kahlo, a lot of what became well known about her body of work is that her work was personal and intimate. And so the museum also shows her bedroom where she recovered from medical procedures, where she experienced pain and explored those themes of identity. That has become universally relatable. So giving people access to our archives can shape how we know them, how we remember, and how we understand their work. I also want to point out the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat, a very different artist working at a very different time in history, in the 1980s in New York City. And a lot of what we understand about the work of Basquiat is thanks to friends and community who documented. At that time, there was Paige Powell, a photographer in that circle of artists who took a lot of pictures of happenings and behind the scenes. So we got a bit of the zeitgeist of how this work existed in the cultural moment of its time. Now, not all of us can fly to Mexico City and go walk through one of the most influential artists in our own career, right? Traditional archives fall short in many ways, and it's not just limited to the physicality. It's also think about the institutions that had resources to be able to preserve work, to be able to show and share work. Those are also going to be influenced by the limitations that those institutions have, by cultural preferences. Traditional archives are also not always comprehensive. You've got a powerful moment right now in time where you have the ability to document your full body of work, your full story, to provide access to your archive for the world to see, if you so choose. Now, a lot of what we're talking about could also be applied as a powerful, quiet internal hub for your work, and you never have to show and share it. It can influence your own perspective on the through line of your work and help you advocate for yourself throughout your career. So traditional archives were often limited in access or limited in the actual scope of what they were providing, what they were able to preserve. And they were also more of a record of the past, whereas now we have the ability to create digital archives. Digital archives allow us to document our own work, right? To document everything all in one place. And we don't have to wait for permission. We don't have to wait for gatekeepers. And because those institutions have funding and decision makers and priorities that may differ from yours, it is a powerful thing to document your own work and not wait for society at large to give you permission. Now, let's launch a poll. I'd like to know, and I'd like you all to see each other and understanding why you're here. Why'd you sign up for this? What is challenging to you right now about archiving? I'm going to pause. Lauren, if you could run the poll, thank you. And then we'll see. So basically, if your struggle is where are your images, imagine never having to shuffle through 15 years of Dropbox folders. Imagine being able to quickly pinpoint the work that you need because it's in a system where you can easily find it. Do you know where all of your key details are? Raise your hand if you've ever been filling out an application like I have and you've asked yourself, ooh, is this 16 by 20 or 18 by 24? And then you have to run around and find a ruler and figure it out again and again. Yeah, imagine having a system accessible on any device where you can quickly pull that information, not just for one, but for all of your documented work. So this is for you, whether or not you consider yourself organized. This poll is simply to understand where you're beginning, because to map our progress, we need to know where we're starting. And in fact, the system will support you in getting back to the creative work, because if you're like many of us, a lot of your system lives in your head and you'll no longer have to pull it all together. All right, let's stop sharing the poll here. Yeah, this is also I'm excited for each of you who are tuning into this, the now 700 of you live on this, the other people who have registered for it, and ever more the ripples of when you share this information out, because tell your friends your work is worth documenting, whether you've made your very first piece of art or you're documenting 50 years, your point of view matters. And you're not alone asking yourself, oh my gosh, when am I going to find the time to do all this stuff, right? So I'm going to ask you to begin with one piece of work, keep that in mind, and then you can apply the concepts that we'll explore to that. Carry that throughout this conversation and know that you're in very good company here. All right, so here's the map of what we're going to cover in our active archive learning framework. Documentation will support all the things that come next. Documentation involves capturing images of the finished artwork and recording those key details, right? The measurements, the materials, the date you made it, and more. Inventory is a system that supports being able to safely store and easily find that information that you've documented. An archive begins to tell a story beyond inventory when it shows the greater context of the work itself, shows the before, the finished, and everything that happens next. Active use is where I literally get pumped up because it transforms the idea of archiving from a dusty old thing of the past or a someday maybe future project into an active tool I can consult right now to make a decision today. And then legacy. We will end with your artistic legacy. And I'll invite you to take on a perspective that your legacy is unfolding right now, and all of this supports it, and your point of view matters. Cool? Let's proceed. So, like I said, think of one artwork as we talk through this essential archival information. Here's what to document. I've broken it into two major parts. The essential information is that finished artwork. It describes everything about that work that you're gonna wanna have once that work flies the coop, once it goes into the world. And then there's how it was created and everything that happens next. We've coined these the context and the impact. And oh, we'll get more into them, but just keep that in mind, right? Document the work itself, and then we'll show you many ways to consider how to document what came before and what happens next. So, images. Strong images are going to support everything you do in your documentation and archiving practice. And now, the world is going to meet most of our work through the digital representation of it because of the tools we have right now. We are all meeting through a webcam. Hello. Thank goodness for this technology. I remember when, before the pandemic, I used to have to explain to people what Zoom was, what I did as part of my living, right? So as artists, we have this ability to take the tools of the time and utilize them to the best of our abilities to express the ideas that we are here to express. Your images are imperative, not only to document your work, but for people to meet and greet it, to be touched and moved and inspired. And so, if all you have is a smartphone, I'm going to give you some tips on how to start documenting today, and know that there are ways to improve beyond that. And you'll receive a workbook and a series of follow-up lessons that we've built for you so that you can incrementally improve your documentation process from here. So, my 3 hot tips for archival quality images using the camera that you have today. Number 1, seek out a source of natural, bright, indirect light. This could be daylight on a cloudy day. This could be balanced light. But the reason will be that there will be no glares, shadows, or distortion. Number 2, set up your work to be photographed straight on. So that could mean laying it flat on a surface like a table or the floor, or hanging it on the wall. This goes for three-dimensional work as well. Again, optimizing the camera that you have to not have distortion. So if you're photographing it in bright indirect light and straight on, you're capturing that image with the minimal amount of distortion possible. Finally, I recommend that you document your work on a neutral background. And this is not because that background should be always in the photos. It's because that is, again, going to optimize your camera to calibrate to the work itself. So it will spend its energy, per se, calibrating to capture the color and the detail and the texture and all that. Those 3 tips, bright, indirect, natural daylight, positioning the work so you can photograph it straight on, and setting it up on a neutral background, That will support the best archival image you can capture using the camera at hand. And then finally, one more little bonus tip, clean your lens. That actually goes a long way. You have a workbook coming to you, as I will mention many times. I'm going to show you. I have it all printed out because I'm so proud of it, and our team has built this. But this thing is going to support you really understanding professional best practices, including how to manage your file types, how to optimize your images, how to do this work on behalf of the art you make and your point of view as a creative. So check that out and look forward to those lessons. But just briefly, I recommend that you think about the images. And if you're a person who captures video, you can also keep the links to those in your archive connected to the work. Audio captures can be kept directly in the piece records and artwork archive, whatever system you're using. Consider the images and video and audio documentation as supportive of your work. Remember Basquiat. Remember how I mentioned in the 1980s, Jean-Michel Basquiat was working amongst a vivacious group of artists. I would have loved to hang out with them then, including a photographer named Paige Powell, who now lives here in Portland and still working. And because of her, grainy 1980s video captures, we have insight into those conversations. We kind of can attend those parties, right? We have all the images. She did a show at the Portland Art Museum where she just put all these photographs up. It was as if we could walk into that world. So that's where I want you to be with your archive. All of that helps invite people in or simply capture it for your own memory and understanding goes into the archival record right alongside the finished work. Now, that essential information about the finished work is going to be the title of the work, the date that you made it, the medium or materials. This is important too if you're someone who mixes things in and later you're going to try to, varnish or something and you need to remember, will it interact with the rain if it falls? All of these notes can be useful to you as a creative as well as to your future collectors, curators, and people who in centuries are super excited to see your work. We also recommend that you create a description of the work. You can keep an internal note to self, and you can also create a description that's public facing. You'll also want to track the value of the work and the location. All of this essential information helps you quickly pinpoint what you need, and you'll need to recall it again and again. Here's my favorite framework: before, at completion, and after, right? So keep it moving. It's the life cycle of your work. That's what goes into your archive. We've got these handy checklists for you in your workbook. And this is a glimpse of artist Dora Samosi, who was a featured artist here in Artwork Archive. Remember how we have artists and collectors and organizations in over 130 different countries? Yeah, so part of what we get to do is people send us in their work and we feature them and see their process. So here we see the studio, we see the table, right? We're in the world in which the work was made. All of this is interesting and valuable to document. You can also document correspondence, commission proposals, that grant that's funding the whole thing. That goes into the record of the context in which the work was created. At the completion, that's where you'll capture the essential information. That's going to be, make sure you photograph the work itself before it leaves you. I've had to go borrow back a painting from a collector. I've been there, right? And then that essential information and documentation. If you're getting overwhelmed at any point in this and you'd rather just go there and create and not bother, just remember this. Just document the title. Just remember to say, I made a thing. Start with what you've got. You can always grow from there. So what I'm offering you is what's possible. And what I'd like you to do is bring it home to what works for you and grow from there. So, after the work leaves the studio, you've noted to self you've made it, you've captured a photo of it, you've jotted that down, or you've put it all in your archive and you're feeling relieved. Now, everything that happens next also goes into the archive. So this could be, hey, this painting is now going to be in an exhibition in a couple of months. You track the location, you track that. Maybe it's sold, you track the sale, the ownership. That builds provenance. Remember Jean-Michel Basquiat? I'm bringing this story back because I literally was in Las Vegas last year talking to a hotel concierge about Artwork Archive because I love what I do. And she said, "Oh, you know about art? My friend has an original Basquiat. Do you want to buy it or do you know someone who would?" And I said, "Wow, that is interesting." Now, that art is at a level, right, where it is imperative to authenticate the work, to authenticate the value. And part of that is going to be this documentation. So, one of the first things I asked her, or she was asking for a friend, as sometimes can be, I said, do they have documented provenance information, which means ownership information? Is that person who currently has it, are they documented as the current owner? Where has it been? Where has it been shown? Where has it been shared? And that's how we can prove that it is the thing. Now, I know you, and I don't know you, but I'm saying, as an artist myself, and the artists that I do know, I don't know if we always wake up in the morning and we're like, one day my work is going to be shown and shared and needed to be authenticated throughout the world. In fact, many of us simply become artists because we have ideas that knock on the door of our consciousness and we respond to them through one of the art forms. And then we go from there and we teach ourselves these things. So, if this is your first time hearing about it or a good reminder, all of the documentation of what happens to the work after it is finished builds provenance and authenticates the work, upholds the value, and helps the world take it seriously. I'm going to pause for a moment and pass the mic to Anna. Take some of the questions about your essential archival information. Hi, Anna.
Hi. Hi. Great information so far. We are getting a lot of questions. So I'm going to go over just a few right now. We are going to do some questions further into the webinar, but just on some of the main ones we're seeing so far that might be good to address now is, do I really need to inventory everything right now? You're muted. There you go.
Such a good question. I was laughing. I'm glad. Um, the answer is start with the work that is right in front of you. For your inventory, what I want this to be is a supportive system that benefits your life right now and builds with you throughout the rest of your career, right? If all you remember from today is to make sure and take a photo of your work before it leaves in bright natural light, document that, that is going to improve your practice, right? All of the layers that go beyond that will only help support you. So that's my
Yes.
answer. Yeah.
And kind of on a similar tone there, another question is, how detailed do we need to
hmm
be with these records?
Ooh, we're going to show you examples of best practices, and you'll get this handy workbook, which has checklists, which can be very supportive for those of us who think like that. Like, am I doing this completely? I know I will rest at night knowing I have what is possible and if I've done that, right? So, we're providing you with examples of what there is to be documented. And I would say you don't have to document everything. There is no like licensing board for being an artist or a documenter of your own work, but it will support you and will show you what to document should you choose.
And I will say too, just quickly, because I've seen this question a little bit here about the images themselves. Anamika's done a fantastic job of going over ways to document, different tools you can use. You don't need fancy equipment. But one of the questions we get is about image size in Artwork Archive. So for those of you asking, with your piece records, whether you're just starting out or if you're kind of wanting to get a refresher on it, you can upload up to 30 images per piece record, and the image file size limit is 30 megabytes. So this allows for those super high resolution images. Um, and it will allow you to have multiple sizes on the record as well. So something to just keep in mind is that there's a lot of possibility there with how much you want to include, getting those high resolution images on there for future use. And then there was another thing too that I wanted to mention. I think that was it for now. Okay, that is it for now. So I will let you carry on, but please keep putting your questions in the Q&A. Oh, I remember the other thing. People are asking about the workbook. You will be getting the workbook and a follow-up email. So for those of you who are like, what is this workbook? It is something you're all getting. So hang tight as we go over more of this information with y'all.
Excellent. See, you've got a team here, and this information is relevant whether you use Artwork Archive as your art inventory, art career, and archiving management system, or you use another system. This is going to be applicable. And what I would say as you're meeting all of us here at Artwork Archive, as we're addressing these things, is we're reachable, real humans at Artwork Archive. So you can email us, you can chat in to support, and we will point you towards not only the features that'll help you get the most out of the platform, but we can also direct you to resources that we've created on these topics to support your practice. Now, let's get into inventory and archiving systems. So most artists manage their art inventory with one of three things: paper-based systems, spreadsheet-based systems, or a database that is built for artists. While paper-based systems are easy to begin, they can have limitations if you do also have digital records of your work because they don't talk together, right? And many artists who have been working for a long time have an archive that spans the physical world into the digital world. I graduated in 2007 with slides in my Bachelor of Fine Art portfolio. Yeah, I'm a millennial, an elder millennial, but I still have slides in a portion of my body of work. And whether or not you started making work before digitization was common, or you just started now and you're seeing all that's possible, the system that's going to be best for you is the system you will use. So I'll present you some examples of what's possible, and then you go do that. Now, spreadsheets also, we hear commonly that that's where you're documenting your information, and those work, but they have limitations in being able to quickly pinpoint and pull together information, and also how to house your images or your video files, things that are related to that information all in one place. A database that's built for artists is going to support documentation of all of this information in a relational way that is designed for what you regularly do. So check this out. A database built for artists is going to keep those images right next to the details and descriptions, and you can keep adding things as you document the work through the world. I actually start a new piece record when I start a new piece now, titling it even work in progress, and start to document that commission correspondence, reference photos, notes or videos about what I'm thinking while I make it, and then I build from there. We'll also show you how that information then relates to the people that you interact with, the places it goes, and more. But know that a database built for artists is going to pull the information in a way you simply can't out of manila file folders or your more static or flat systems such as the spreadsheet. So when looking for a system and considering where to move in to your metaphorical Casa Azul, I want to make sure you know it can capture the basic details about your finished work. It has the ability to track locations as that work moves through the world. It will document exhibitions and history, the provenance and ownership, the people related to the work, whether or not they're collectors. You'll be able to generate reports and communicate out of the system on your behalf and have secure, accessible storage for your imperative work. Here's an example of a visual database for archiving that we built in Artwork Archive. And you can see there's that image of the piece, its current location, and that builds as it goes along. You've got location history, provenance, and more. And here, all of that essential information to track that typical stuff that you need to communicate again and again about the size and medium, subject matter, and more. And you can also help streamline your own collection by creating tags and grouping the work itself together. When entering information into a system, whatever system you choose, we recommend that your titles stay consistent. I'm just going to say a piece about that. So I'm currently consulting with an artist on a 50-year body of work, and she's setting up her archive. And she's not alone in that the actual pieces of artwork change in title over the years sometimes. So that can make it difficult to create an archive in the future. If you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I used to refer to that as blue, but then I, renamed it. So please, if you do anything, please title your things consistently and then document them in images. That archival image is going to become so valuable as an asset while you go, not just to document the through line of your work and look back, but to apply to future exhibits, to be ready to go for opportunities, to show an interested collector a whole bunch of your work in that style if you're talking about creating a commission. And it can become valuable in future reproduction or editions, licensing, and more. That image archive is an asset as you build it. Also, use consistent terminology in describing your medium. It'll help you with keyword search and it'll help people who describe your work. So pick something and stick with it. That is something we recommend. Dimensions as well will benefit you as well as curators, collaborators, locations, and more when they're planning exhibits and when you are going to be showing and creating shipping estimates. And you can also document, for example, once you frame something, the dimensions as they expand or change. Our system also allows you to document and choose your measurement system since not everyone in the world uses inches. You can also convert to metric. Now we get a lot of questions about inventory numbers. And first, I just want to point out that in Artwork Archive, you're not required to utilize inventory numbers. But if you're going to be creating inventory numbers, we have recommendations on the best practices for them. And you'll get more detailed information in your workbook, but we recommend that you use a zero-based numbering system like this so that it can expand instead of this where it wouldn't be consistent because you didn't allow yourself enough zeros to grow. Here's examples, and again, we go into detail on a lot of these in the workbook. So here are things to avoid, which I find helpful, and some examples of common numbering formats. Now, if you're starting to space out when I talk about inventory numbering systems, come back to me. Here's the thing. Many of us are self-led through large parts of our career education, how to work in this world as an artist, in addition to our art making. Whether or not we've had access to formal training in art business, career management, the specialization of the art form you do, there's always more to learn. And so please know that you have access to this information and it can help you with fluency, open doors and opportunities, but it doesn't mean you're an imposter if you don't already know this. That's why we're here to share this information. That's why I love doing what I do. Okay, so let's talk about sort and filter. Remember that idea of like a bunch of manila file folders or my slides in a binder in my basement? That's a physical archive, or a more flat system like a spreadsheet that is digitized. Sort and filter are where I start to get super pumped about a database built for artists like Artwork Archive because you can quickly pinpoint and bring together the information that you need. I think of it as if I'm sitting on the side of a mountain saying, bring me all my landscapes. And all of those images can come together in a collection simply using the tools of sort and filter. Next, we recommend that you add context to these records. So we've talked about this a bunch already, but that's everything that happens before and that comes after once the work is finished. Woohoo! I'm going to pause here for a moment and bring Anna back on to see how you're all doing. I know my team is working hard there in the Q&A and the chat. And what I often see is that artists support each other too. People who have been around a few of these will help and chime in. So we're here to learn and make sure you get understanding. Anna, how's it going?
Yeah, we are zipping away. Our little fingers are tip tap tappity tapping on fire over here. Y'all are asking some fantastic questions. Be sure that those of y'all who are sending questions in the chat that you actually put those questions in the Q&A because they can get lost in the chat. And myself and our team are actually answering your questions live in that Q&A in your Zoom menu. A quick question we have here is some people are expressing I've been an artist for X amount of time. I've never done a digital archive or archiving of any sort. I'm not super tech savvy. What would you say to people who are expressing, um, the anxiety of feeling like they might not be tech savvy enough?
Yes, we've got you. Remember when you had to learn how to get onto Zoom for the first time? Even if that time was today, you got here. You're here to answer that question saying, I'm not tech savvy enough. I am an elder millennial and I just figured out a new piece of tech to get this microphone to work, right? We do know how to do things. And so I would invite you to try on this system for yourself and start by documenting that one work. Start by making an archival image of it, capturing the title, the dimensions, writing a description, and then put that into our system. It's it's great when you can put a few more and start to pull that information together. We recommend 10 images for that. You'll see that it'll actually, I find, relieve some of that new technology learning phobia and start to incentivize learning more. It's also a good reminder you can reach our team and write into us, chat into us. I had this question actually last week in a webinar. Someone said, sounds great, but if I do this, like, am I just going to get routed through AI bots trying to find help? No, we are committed to being real human beings accessible during regular weekday working hours. And that's something that I find very supportive. In addition to building the platform and improving it so it supports your navigation, you can always reach out to us for support.
On that same note, people are asking too, like, how long do I anticipate this taking to
Mhm.
start the inventory process and that upkeep that comes with being an active artist?
Yeah. So how long would be related to how long you've been creating art, how much is documented, right? In our workbook, we have actually worksheets for you to assess your archive as it is right now and create a goal for yourself of like why the heck this is worth prioritizing and break it down into daily incremental assignments. So, what I want for you to do is incorporate this into your life, into your art practice, use it to actually inform your decisions. That way, it rewards the work no matter how long it takes. Um,
And I would
yeah,
like to mention too, oh, sorry to mean to interrupt.
you got this.
I was gonna say, I also want to mention too that when you start getting that artwork into your account, you'll see that kind of that relational organizational aspect of the platform. So you'll have those sorting features and filtering capabilities with all of those artworks in your account so it can find any image for, if you're applying to an opportunity, if you're trying to find what's available for someone asking about commissions, that sort of thing. It's all going to have all the information there. So those of you who are asking about inventory numbers, I've seen we got a few inventory number questions. You feel free to use those if you would rather just use, the description, the title, tags, whatever other kind of organizational features in your account, everything could be sorted and filtered. So I just wanted to mention that real quick since I've seen a few of those questions too.
That's great. Thank you so much. I love doing these with you, Anna. Okay, so the reason we are calling this the active archive is directly related to it serving you. I don't want to add another task to your life that takes you away from making the work. I want to get back to this. I like squishing paint around. I like observing the world and processing my perspective, right? So all of this is going to be the most motivating if it's beneficial right now. And I didn't always have this system in place. In fact, I'm continuing to document my archive, those slides I mentioned. But what I'll show you is that, for example, if this piece sells and I need to generate a certificate of authenticity, which is like the birth certificate or title of your car, it's that document that accompanies the work once it leaves and goes in the world. If I had to generate that, now it's going to be faster to put the information or pull it out through my system because that system serves me. This is not some another thing you got to do just to be better, whatever. This is going to actually help you be more efficient, spend more time making the work, reach the opportunities you want. Okay? That's where the active archive comes in. So I'll show you some examples. An active archive, whether it's here, as we'll show you in Artwork Archive, or it's your folders or your other systems, it's a living, breathing, responsive system that helps inform the work. Now, looking back through what you've documented can actually help create a through line and an expression of your work, pinpoint your voice as an artist. So an active archive can serve you no matter what you're doing with it. But an active archive is something you're going to want to be consulting, pulling from, and sharing out of on a near daily basis, depending on what you're doing. Here's an example. Do you know where all of your work is located? Like, actually, is it right here in the room with you? Is some of it gifted to a certain person? Is it in the collection of a hospital or a collector? Do you have some of it stored in your own basement? Where is that work physically located? An active archive is going to serve you in not needing to track all that information right here, in being easy to keep up to date so you can swiftly see where everything is and then promise it to the next show or communicate on behalf of a person or track that provenance information, keep in touch with collectors if it were to change hands. Also, an active archive is going to document exhibitions. And traditionally, we were taught to document exhibitions along with pieces to build that provenance, that record of where the piece has been shown and shared. It's interesting to collectors, it's informative to you. And in an active archive, I create an exhibition record. As soon as I apply, I track what pieces I've promised to that exhibition, whether they've gotten in, when I need to drop them off, pick them up, if they've been sold, where they go. That exhibition history is an active, living, breathing part. We don't need to keep it in a system separate from our images and artwork records. In fact, it makes a lot of sense in a relational system that we're managing these opportunities in the moment. It's also helpful to track who the people are involved, where it's located, what the deadlines are, and more. So an active archive will serve you in freeing up your cognitive energy by having a go-to place, a one source of truth, per se, for all this information. Your archive can also track important relationships. And I want to pause for a second here because something that is really important to understand is that we as artists are those of us, we as artists create our work, right? We create it often for self-expression, sometimes for connection, community building, and for those of us who have a creative business as a product or a service. So, yes, we do have customers, collectors, clients, but we don't always need to value relationships only based on the fact that they're a collector, a customer, a client. We love them. They love those people, but those exist in the realm of our creative business. We also have collaborators, curators, our, you know, go-to person at the art supply store that can order the high flow pigment that I always want, right? The person with a truck in another city who can actually move your work from point A to point B. We have relationships that are imperative to our career, that are distinct from our personal lives, oftentimes, that aren't really customers or clients. And so that is important because your relationships are a backbone of your career. Every show, sale, opportunity, right, comes to you in collaboration with another human being. And there's this idea in business of a CRM, like a CRM, a customer or client relationship management system, right? Now, client relationship management is often used as a sales tool to track the person, follow up, close the sale, and that is strategic. And in Artwork Archive, we have built a contact relationship management system to track all of those human relationships that support your career. And so let me show you. When documenting your relationships in your archive, I want you to think about it the same way as artwork. There's that straightforward stuff like who they are, how to get a hold of them. If you're visual like me, a headshot is helpful too, right? That kind of finished work, who the person is. You can also document how you met, how that relationship came to be, the context in which you created that connection. And you can continue to document everything that happens next. Say they've invited you to follow up in a couple months, show them what you're working on, right? You can make a note to self to send them your newest collection or a behind the scenes glimpse or private room. You can set reminders. You can also document for your clients and collectors what pieces they've bought. That builds provenance and it's also strategic in your career because you can do exclusive invites to those collectors and your collector base grows over time. You understand what work they're investing in and the value that they bring. All of this can live in the same place as your artwork records. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about because it's really a game changer. And note, these are not the people that have followed you on social media or subscribed to your email list if you're doing that. Those systems exist out and they have different purposes. All of this that I'm talking about today is a quiet internal hub for your own reference to make sure you have a go-to place, a home for all your information, and you can easily find it when you need it. You can choose to use features that show and share out of the system, but this is all going to be for your own internal tracking and career purposes. Now, many of those relationships do lead to sales, right? And that's where the system can support you as well. So you don't have to keep it all in your head. Create a proposal, see at a glance where it is. If you're like me, there's, several things running all at once and you can begin to move them along. Follow up, send them an invoice. I'll often charge half up front and then follow up with the second half once it's completed. Or if it's a larger thing like a mural, there's going to be several installations in the payment, that sort of thing. So this is a system that supports the way that we really work. I don't know about you too, but I have, you know, struggled fiddling with design software, trying to make a polished invoice for, gosh, I can think of when I taught painting at a memory care facility up on the hill here a few years ago, they said, we can't cut you a check until you give us an invoice, and so just polishing that up, having those all ready to go. It's so nice that in the same system that I'm documenting my work and all of my contacts and information and shows, I can also simply pull up a template, present a beautiful invoice that looks on brand, and it facilitates all of that communication that we need to do. These expenses that we incur while we're working are also informative. So we built an expense and income tracking feature into Artwork Archive system. This, of course, can prepare you for tax time. You can also track expenses that are related directly to an individual artwork. For example, if I chose to frame this and then I needed to ship it, I would add those expenses directly to the piece record itself so that I understand when I do eventually sell it, or not for my own internal purposes, what I'm investing into that piece. And remember when I talked about how many of us create art for self-expression, many of us create art for connection, and for those of us who have chosen this as a career for products and services under the realm of a creative business. Now you can also document your expenses in self-expression and connection for your information. I'll understand the investment that I'm putting into my materials and contributions on a community-led mural or something that I am participating in under the umbrella of my art career that may not be directly related to the profit margin on an individual piece. But all of this is what I do in the context of being a professional working artist. And it is empowering and informative to not only my value and contribution, but how much it costs me over time. And it makes taxes easier. So once you have the information in a system, an active archive should support you in pulling that information out when you need it. When Artwork Archive started, we were a cloud-based secure storage system, one of the first art inventory management systems to be cloud-based in response to a need of a physical hard drive failure, right? But what's beautiful about that and what we've built and improved upon since is that once you have that key detail information, those images and more, you need to pull from them all the time. So we created these polished reports. This is an example of an inventory report. Check these out. We also have all these other documents that are so often needed when we are communicating on behalf of our art. You can run a consignment report here when dropping off work to be included in a show. So they have that documentation of what it is, the value, how to contact you, all of that. Tear sheet, remember that idea of a certificate of authenticity? Now that's going to be that documentation signed by you that this authenticates the original work. I used to have to create these out of my own template and save them individually every time. Now, if I've already got my artwork documented in the system, it populates right to this and on I go. I can also save a copy of it into the piece record itself, further establishing that provenance and making sure I'm doing the professional best practices to support the work. So these are also somewhat of an education in and of themselves if you're one of the many artists who are self-led through major parts of your art making and your art career education. These support you in professional best practices and show you what is possible. Now, there are times when I need to show and share work, or you may need to show and share work with people out of the system. And in Artwork Archive, we created a feature called private rooms. Private rooms allow you to create a dynamic viewing experience that you could share exclusively with one or more people. You can password protect it, and it gives people a sense of almost being like a VIP. Let's say I have a show coming up and I want to look back at all my collectors and send them a sneak peek. Say, hey, I have this coming up, and because you've collected my work in the past, I'd like to invite you first to take a look at this private room. You can even make it dynamic in that they can favorite works or ask questions. And this is very useful when your work is already documented in the system to be able to share it out in this very pinpointed way. Since 2010, when we began, we also have been hearing that artists need to have an online presence. Now, all of this can be private by default. This is optional to share, But if you so choose, you can choose to share some or all or parts of your body of work online. And we built the public profile feature for this. So you can curate a collection of your work and build it out and make that available. And if you do, you can be included on Artwork Archive's discovery page, which is where all of those artists and collectors and arts organizations, those of them who have chosen to create a public profile and make the work searchable, you can browse through their work on Discovery. Discovery is also visited by curators. Perhaps they're looking for artists in your region. They'll keyword search. For me, it would be Oregon, or perhaps they would keyword search Canada, right? Or a certain medium and more. You can choose what is shown and shared here, and it will be a strong way to establish your web presence or a strong addition to your web presence if you already have one. Now, who here has a website? If you are already operating a website on behalf of your art career, your public profile can be embedded directly into your website. You can choose to embed the whole thing or certain collections of it. And what's neat about that is it saves us time. It saves us from having to do double entry. I no longer have to update my archive and then go update my website. In fact, every time I update my inventory, it is reflected in the pieces that I've chosen to show and share on the public profile itself. And I know well, many times people at this point are saying, well, are you sure it'll work with my website? I use Squarespace or FASO or, all of these different website builders, whatever they are. We have built the web embed feature to work with the majority of the website builders out there. And you can always email us at team@artworkarchive.com or chat with us on the platform or browse our help library, which is there to support you in using these features. And yes, even the most technophobic people I have worked with, it is sometimes such a pleasure to introduce them to tools like this and see that it is possible. In fact, aha, you can do it. So we're here to support you and show you what is possible for you and your work, and then help you get it done. All right, Anna, come back to me.
Hello.
Hello. I'm
How
gonna
are
drink
y'all doing?
some tea. It's my second cup of tea.
Yeah, sounds great. I know it's a lot of talking. So I will take over for a little bit here while you get your sips in. Again, great questions. Keep them coming in the Q&A. And as Anamika said, if we don't get to your questions today, there's a lot of really great in-depth questions, some that are personal to you and your artwork and your art practice. Feel free to follow up with us at any time. You can always, as Anamika said, email us, live chat with us. We are here to help be your sounding board, be your guide as you kind of get further into this information, the content of this workshop. Some questions that we have. Um, the Let me see. We kind of There were a bunch of similar topics that we've been getting so far. I kind of want to pare them down into envelop them into one category. Uh, the terms archive and inventory. How would you describe the differentiation there? And is it important to differentiate the two?
Great question. And I can get super nerdy about my vocabulary and distinctions. And the way that I explain it is an inventory system is going to be a reliable place to document and track the current status, past status, the information related to all of your work, right? Pinpoint the locations, the all of the materials, the images, and more. So the inventory system is going to support that backbone of the documentation. An archive is where it gets interesting. An archive, when it crosses into an archive, in my mind, is when we begin to include all of that context of creation and have a place to truly house everything that happens next. And so that's where, your contact records, your exhibitions, your financial records, your reporting, your all of that, that's all of the active part of an archive that's possible in the here and now. And then when I think of archives in an historical sense, they were a comprehensive set of records. I mean, sometimes incomplete, but an in-depth set of records documenting a body of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And on that topic too, people are asking about like, hey, I've been using a notepad, I've been using a spreadsheet, in the past to document, is it going to be a lot of work? Is it going to be like, a frustrating process for me to get stuff from one place to another? Um, we have lots of resources for you. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by it, as Anamika has said several times, start small, start with one work here, work up to maybe 4 to 10 artworks in your account. And each step of the way, you'll realize getting information in is easier. And if you are interested in an import process, our team also does offer an import service for those of you who have a lot of artwork data already in a spreadsheet. Reach out to us via email or chat, and we can also give you more information on that.
Yeah.
Another question we're getting to is about who is this for, really? We're talking about inventorying. Sometimes it's people who have been working for 50 years as a professional artist. Sometimes people who are
Mhm.
just getting started, which I think is a fantastic time to join this webinar. What would you say to people who are saying, at what point in my career do I start doing this?
Yeah. All right. Right now is the point in your career when you start doing this. That's when. For you is who it's for. No, truly. I've been a working artist, and as a working artist, all of us are here because we have this innate desire to create and express, and we're arts advocates, right? So there is a place for you in the art world, whether you're an emerging artist, whether you even struggle to call yourself an artist or not, whether you're at that point of initiation, or you're somewhere in the middle, or you're looking back at decades of work and you're really well established. This is for you because it's going to benefit you. It will allow you to direct the trajectory of your career and powerfully advocate for your work. If you do this right now at the beginning of your career, I will be thrilled for you. And no matter where we are, this will benefit us. And that's where the active concept is just practical, right? It's the goal of you spending time right now in this webinar and implementing this in your real life and art practice is that it's going to benefit you. That's the system to build. That's the part of this to pull towards you and prioritize. So, yeah, you're in the right place. I also want to speak to that question right before where someone said, well, is this going to be frustrating? Or I have this other system, another other system. Number one, I cannot promise it won't be frustrating. It'll probably be frustrating at some points, but making art can be frustrating at some points. We still do it, right? It goes through the whole gamut. And there's that benefit, there's that reward, there's the clarity of cognitive load that comes from having all of your work documented and preserved and being able to actively find it and use it. So the benefits will outweigh the, discipline of implementation. And whatever you have to do to learn, know that it's very possible for you to do this work. The other thing I want to say is we work at Artwork Archive and we're showing you these examples as are implemented in our system, and you may have another system. In your workbook and earlier in this presentation, we talked about considerations when choosing an archiving system. So I want that to inform you as you evaluate your current system. Is it a is it a reliable place to keep your records? Can you easily get the information out when you need it? And does it enable you to reach your goals as an artist? Now, a lot of people might misunderstand if they're, for example, documenting their whole career on Instagram. We don't own that system. We can't easily get our records back out of it. That is not, in fact, an archive. That would be something we link out to for our archive, or we pull the images from it in if they're relevant, or the stories. Perhaps some of those contacts are real people that have come into our career. So those they aren't built as a database for artists. So be real. Let's all be real. I know I've invested many years in learning this. The the archiving system that will work for you as a system you will use, and that you're motivated to keep it up so that it is an active support of your career and your work. And we'll get into artistic legacy next, so you can see that long range view as well.
I do want to mention just because you mentioned the topic of exporting, and I've seen we have some questions here in the Q&A about exporting. You mentioned it of like we are all artists or art professionals on the Artwork Archive team, and as artists ourselves, having your own data be yours and you always have access to it is really, really important to us. So just know, as you're inputting all of your images for your artwork, those 30 megabytes or lower, high res images into your account, the artwork data, exhibition history, all that good stuff. It's always going to be accessible to you. You can always export and download whenever you need. It is meant to be something that you can carry with you. You can access it on your phone. You can get it, on your computer in your studio. So it's something that you will always have with you, and it's never locked or trapped behind a paywall. It is yours and yours alone. So I just want to make sure that that was touched on.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you all for your questions. Keep putting those questions into the Q&A, and our team will respond to them. And if we're not able to get to yours in the live session, we'll follow up with a response. So make sure you include your name. Don't post anonymously for that reason. All right, let's go. Artistic legacy. So we're going to talk about artistic legacy here. And I want to invite you to consider that your artistic legacy is unfolding right now. Remember when I talked about the realms in which we create? We create for self-expression, we create for connection, we create for creative business, creating products and services, right? When an idea knocks at the door of our consciousness and we act on it and work it through one of our art forms, we're creating art. And that gives that form to the idea. And so part of our legacy is built in the work. And then we are stewards of the work when we document it, when we care for it, when we give it an archive and uphold its value in that way. I want you to consider that there is also your artistic legacy that goes beyond the individual work or even the body of work that you create. Your unique point of view as a human being is part of the power of your legacy. So whether you're intentional about it or not, whether this is the first time you've pondered your legacy or not, your point of view is powerful. And here's why. None of us know what it's like to walk in your shoes, make your art, express your ideas, how you're right. But as artists, we have a unique ability to bring people into that perspective or to touch and move and inspire them through the work we create. That is what distinguishes us from many of the other professions. And that, I would posit, is an opportunity for building empathy, for understanding each other's perspective. And in a world that feels very black and white at times, and that's human. We like to sort things out and simplify them. Art can grapple with things that are simply undefinable. Art can communicate your point of view, your idea, your intention, and it can sometimes even teach us as we're making it. We don't even know that it was going to be about that, but there it is, having that impact on ourselves and others in the world at large. So your legacy, part of it can come deliberately through you, and part of it you'll watch unfold, and part of it you'll never know. So consider this. We leave a material legacy, right? That's a lot of probably why you came here today. Talk about how do I approach this task? Documenting, what information to track? How do I keep it in a system that actually works? How do I make time for any of this while also making my life's work? The material legacy of our proverbial stacks of work we create throughout our lifetime, that's going to be part of our legacy in the world. But the legacy of impact is the impact on others. That's bringing them into our point of view. That's them interacting and encountering our work. Part of that we can document in our archive through exhibition info, ownership, testimonials, or press, things like that, where we do see, know, and experience the impact. Part of it we may never know. And beyond that impact on others that is a bit more tangible, we all have a legacy of impact on history itself. Because history is simply the right? The documentation of what's unfolding on a collective level. And we are all thinking our thoughts, living our lives, making our work right now while history unfolds. And that ripples out into the larger cultural conversation of our time. So by documenting our work, we not only inform ourselves, but if we so choose, we can make the work accessible to the world at large. I'll tell you a quick story about this. So when I was 11 in sixth grade, I did a cultural connections project where we, investigated a topic we were interested in. At the time, I was really into all the big murals in my hometown. And I got to go meet the muralists. I got to actually interview them. And I remember this guy, Jim Evangelista, who talked to me about making murals. And, he said, the best way to learn how to paint is to paint. And that stuck with me. And the legacy of impact of passing those murals and feeling that personal connection to that artist stuck with me as well. And he may not know that I grew up to create murals of my own and talk about impact, but what he did was make a personal impact on me by making himself available to an 11-year-old kid and by choosing an art form that was accessible to the community, right? Those are a couple of places he might have known. Yeah, I volunteered on this day for that, middle schooler. Yeah, I painted these murals. They were in the paper in his archive. I hope, ideally, those are documented there as documentation of that impact. But he may not know all of the ripple effects beyond that. So, your artistic legacy is partly deliberate, partly simply what unfolds once you create, and part of it you'll be able to document, and part of it you may never know. So, let's pause and reflect. I would like you to think about that single piece of work. Earlier, when I said single piece of work, I was saying, what are the dimensions? Do you have a photo or how are you going to make an image of it? What's happened to it so far? Documenting that one piece of work as a way to begin your archive. Now I want to ask you about, it could be that work or it could be one significant thing about your career or your experience making art so far that you could see being part of your artistic legacy. We've got some prompts for you, and I would also invite you to look forward to those emails that'll deliver you this workbook where worksheets will guide you through this process. But answer me this and put it in the chat. In the future, when people talk about my art, they will say, and imagine there is a future person 100 years from now who is coming and seeing your work. What will they say? Put it in the chat. I'll take a minute here to let you do that. Oh, these are great. I see people will say, you've captured the essence of a place. This is imaginative. Her diversity is astounding. What a legacy. What a body of work. I like how she used color. It was fresh, peaceful, and helped me manage the chaos of everyday life. Indeed. And then think about if they can deepen their understanding, knowing the context of your world in which you created it, and perhaps where that work met the world along its way to meeting them. So that's where we take this work. Building your archive is possible. Building your archive benefits you right now, and building your archive supports the potential impact and unfolding of your career into the future. So you'll receive a series of follow-up emails, and I want to show you that Artwork Archive is built to grow with you. You can start an trial account and try it for 2 weeks And we won't take any credit card information up front. Put your work into the system and your information into the system and pull those features. See a report, create a private room, see how it supports you and informs you. Then we're built to grow with you. So a lot of the features we were talking about today are supported at the professional level here with those private rooms and public profile tracking and more. And you can get started with up to 100 artworks at the apprentice level. Once you grow, if you're someone who has a large body of work, you're well established and more, our account type that has unlimited inventory and storage is here at the master. So consider us built to meet you where you're at for any stage of career, whether you're been making art for 5 days and you came here, that's a great start. 5 years or 50, we've got you. We also have resources like this. We do live trainings, generous education. We have a blog where we feature our artists. We have our discovery page, art opportunities, calls for entry. You can also always reach out to us, real human beings at team@artworkarchive.com. And that free trial is a commitment where you can try the platform. We don't take your credit card information so that when you do choose to subscribe, it is an intentional choice. This is you starting. You attended this training, you pondered it, let it wash over you. It is my sincere intention that some of it is going to get you excited. I sure hope. If you're overwhelmed, that is also perfectly understandable. So begin with that piece. We've got worksheets to support you. Those will be coming in the email follow-ups. And start where you are. Document one work. Move that work out of the studio and use your archive on an active, ongoing basis to get your work in the world. It is so nice to meet you. Thank you so very much for joining us. And that's where I'm going to conclude the presentation. Thank you.